It's 1855, Paris. You have somehow found yourself at a state banquet hosted by Napoleon III, and the guest list is not joking around. We're talking royalty, generals, heads of state, the kind of people who have countries named after things they own. The table is 60 feet long, and every surface that can be gold is gold. The candelabras are gold, the platters are gold, the cutlery they set in front of you is heavy, cold, obviously expensive gold. You nod. You're impressed. Sure. But the man at the head of the table is eating off something else, something lighter, something his staff keeps locked away between banquets like it's a state secret. Something so rare and so absurdly expensive that handing it to you would be like tossing you the keys to a Ferrari as a party favor. He is saving it for himself and the 2 or 3 people he wants to make feel genuinely special, and everyone else, the dukes and the generals and the foreign dignitaries eating off solid gold, well, they'll manage. That material? You threw some of it in the trash this morning. You probably used it to cover a bowl in your fridge. It might be crumpled up next to an old takeout container right now. By the end of this video, you will understand exactly why an emperor hid it from his wealthiest guests, why the United States put it at the literal highest point of their most important national monument, and how it subsequently suffered one of the most complete economic collapses of any material in recorded history. You will never look at a soda can the same way again. That's not a promise I make lightly. Here's a question that sounds like a trick. What is the most abundant metal in the Earth's crust? Not gold, not copper, not iron. Aluminum. It makes up roughly 8% of everything under your feet. It is, in the most literal sense, everywhere. Which makes the obvious follow-up question almost embarrassing. Why in 1852 did it cost more per ounce than gold? Because the Earth being full of something and you being able to actually get it are 2 entirely different problems. Aluminum is clingy. At the molecular level, it bonds aggressively to oxygen, forming aluminum oxide, and that bond is one of the most chemically stable things in nature. It sits locked inside a dull reddish rock called bauxite, and the entire 19th century simply did not have a clean way to break it open. You could find bauxite everywhere. Getting the aluminum out of it without electricity, which barely existed yet, required an amount of effort that bordered on the theatrical. What you could do in the 1820s was what a German chemist named Friedrich Wöhler did. He spent years carefully reacting aluminum compounds with potassium, a process that was slow, genuinely dangerous, and produced aluminum in quantities measured in pinches, not ounces, pinches, barely enough to see. He was celebrated for it. He deserved to be. By the 1850s, a French chemist named Henry St. Clair de Ville had refined the process enough to produce small, visible bars of the stuff. He presented them at the 1855 Paris World's Fair. People walked past displays of diamonds to stare at this, which tells you everything you need to know about what people thought they were looking at. The price at the time works out to roughly $100,000 per kilogram in today's money. Some historical estimates go higher. To translate that into something that actually means something, a few ounces of aluminum would cost you what a luxury car costs today. A kilogram, a real estate down payment, comfortably. Napoleon III understood with perfect instinct what this meant for a man in his position. He funded de Ville's research directly out of the French state budget. He commissioned aluminum baby rattles for the royal infant. And at those legendary banquets, the ones where the merely very wealthy and the ordinarily powerful ate with gold, he made aluminum his personal flex, quietly, casually. He didn't announce it. He just used an aluminum fork because he could, and if you were paying attention, you understood exactly what you were looking at. The wider European elite caught the fever too. Aluminum jewelry, small aluminum sculptures displayed in parlors the way people now display art, an aluminum opera hat that was considered the height of sophistication specifically because it weighed almost nothing and almost nobody could afford one. Paris jewelers sold pieces of it beside their gold and gem collections, explicitly positioning it as the superior luxury, which, by the metrics that actually drive luxury markets, rarity and inaccessibility, it genuinely was. Jump forward to 1884. The United States is finishing something they started before the Civil War interrupted it: the Washington Monument. 555 feet of white Maryland marble, the tallest man-made structure in the world at that point, built to honor the Founding Father and, let's be honest, to tell the rest of the world that America had arrived and intended to be noticed. It needed a capstone, something to sit at the very tip. The architect chose aluminum, a small pyramid just under 6 inches on each side, weighing 100 ounces. There was a minor practical argument for it. Aluminum conducts electricity, which makes it a reasonable lightning conductor for a very tall marble tower. But nobody puts the cheapest available material at the top of their most important national monument and calls it a lightning rod decision. This was a statement. The most valuable refined metal in the world placed at the highest point on the continent to sit there in the rain indefinitely. That is not an engineering choice. That is a flex in stone. Before the capstone went up, they took it to New York. And here's the genuinely fun part. It was displayed on the floor of Tiffany's, not in a case, on the floor, so that visitors could step over it, so they could say they had literally stepped over the most valuable and prestigious piece of aluminum in the world, the object about to become the highest point on the continent. People lined up to do this. Newspapers covered it. They treated a 6.5-pound metal pyramid with the reverence of a relic because in 1884, that is exactly what it was. On December 6, 1884, workers at the top of the scaffolding scratched their names into the 4 sides of the capstone before it went up. Their names are now at the highest point of one of the most visited monuments in the United States, carved into what we currently press into beverage cans. The capstone is still there, still aluminum, still sitting at the top of that tower, entirely unaware that its material now trades for around $2 a kilogram on the open market. Nobody at that December 1884 installation ceremony could have seen what was coming. And what was coming took exactly 2 years. In 1886, 2 22-year-olds on opposite sides of the Atlantic cracked the problem that had locked aluminum behind its chemical wall for the entire century. Charles Martin Hall was working in a woodshed behind his family home in Oberlin, Ohio. Hall-Héroult was in a Paris laboratory. They never communicated. They never knew the other existed. They arrived at the same answer within months of each other, independently, from the same starting point. The answer was electricity. If you dissolve aluminum oxide in a molten mineral called cryolite and run a strong electrical current through it, the oxygen and aluminum separate. The aluminum sinks, you collect it. That's the whole thing. The Hall-Héroult process. It is not, in retrospect, a complicated idea. It just required someone to actually do it, and 2 people happened to do it at the same moment. What happened to the price is not a gradual decline. It is a cliff. In 1854, aluminum cost $545 a pound. By 1888, 2 years after publication, it was under $2. By 1893, it was 18 cents. The people who stacked aluminum ornaments and jewelry and cutlery in their cabinets as stores of value watched the entire premise evaporate, not slowly. The scarcity was gone. And it turned out the scarcity had been doing all the work the whole time. The aluminum hadn't changed. The story around it had collapsed. The jewelry became costume jewelry. The decorative pieces became embarrassing. The metal moved from parlor cabinets to pots and pans, to engine components, to gutter spouts, to the crumpled sheet in your kitchen drawer. Napoleon III's locked-up banquet cutlery, the Washington Monument's extravagant capstone, kitchen foil. Here's the thing. The aluminum never changed, not one atom. The exact material Napoleon's staff stored in a locked cabinet between dinners is chemically identical to what is sitting in your recycling bin right now. The lightness is the same. The reflectivity is the same. The corrosion resistance is the same. Nothing about the substance shifted when Hall-Héroult ran their experiment. The only thing that changed was how easy it became to get it, and that was the entire ballgame. The value was never in the material. It was in the story of who could access it and who couldn't. It was in Napoleon being able to set a fork on his table that nobody in the room could afford to own. It was in America saying with a straight face that its greatest monument deserved the most expensive thing they could put on it. The moment those stories became untellable, the moment anyone could buy as much of it as they wanted for almost nothing, the value didn't decline. It disappeared overnight.
And it makes you wonder how many things today are only valuable because they're still difficult to access. If the Hall-Héroult process had never been discovered, would aluminum still be one of the world's most precious metals today? Or was it always destined to become worth less and eventually worthless history? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you enjoy stories about things humanity once treated as priceless, only for time to make them ordinary, subscribe to Worthless History. More videos soon.